All right, hello everyone, and welcome to an episode of Dear Doctor Fantasy. And for my very special guest today, here is Gavin. Gavin, welcome to Dear Doctor Fantasy. It is really great to meet you here.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm very honored. I've been watching the show for quite a while, and I think we've got a good chat to talk about with some fantasy comics and manga.
Yeah, I'm very excited to talk about all three of those. I grew up on comic books. That was my passion when I was a kid. So I have mainly comics from the late 70s to the mid 80s, slightly older than you. In fact, my viewers would probably have noticed that you're a little bit younger than the usual guest that I have here, which I'm really excited to talk to you actually because you are a well-read young person, and that alone makes me happy to meet young people who are well-read and are passionate about fantasy and manga and whatnot. But also, I think your perspective is going to be really valuable here. So I appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, awesome. All right. Well, just so my viewers can get a sense of what you're all about, and I will have a link, of course, to your channel in the description.
Yeah, thank you
But
for that.
I think it'd be awesome to get a sense. If we just start out with my standard question, which is going on the assumption that you are what you read, Gavin. What are some of the highlights of your reading journey? What are some important landmark stories that have affected you that you could pull out to explain the person you are today? And you can go as early as you want, and bring us up to the Gavin of now.
Yeah, I have a lot. I did write a little bit beforehand for this.
Cool,
Um,
prepared. I like it. Yeah.
yeah. So I started. I really got into fantasy in seventh grade,
Uh-huh.
and it was when my teacher had us read The Giver, and that's kind of like fantasy and sci-fi,
Mm-hmm.
but
Lois
that
Lowry, right? Yeah, good. Yeah.
yeah, and so I really got in then. But I'll tell you what I wrote. So I originally got into fantasy through comics and manga.
All right.
Obviously, there were fantasy books that I had read prior to that, but when I started reading comics and manga that were fantasy, I just absolutely fell in love with the genre.
Okay.
I started with like the basics. The Flash is one of my favorites.
Oh, cool. Good choice. Yeah.
And when it came to manga, I started with, I think, One Piece and yeah, which I know you love. So
Yep. I'm in the well, I'm not in the middle now. I'm getting toward getting close to getting caught up in One Piece
yeah.
and later I
Oh,
do want to get your recommendations for manga, but we'll have to talk about One Piece today for sure.
yeah, it's huge.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I'm trying to think what arc did it. I think I just made it to, is it Skypiea?
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm not terribly far in,
Yeah, so
but
you're behind me then. Okay, good, good.
yeah,
But
for
that's
sure.
enough. We can chat plenty if you're on Skype here. Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, but as I was researching, comics and manga, I realized that both mediums were much larger than I expected. And
Hmm.
I actually did a ton of research on independently published comics. Yeah,
Cool. Yeah.
those
Tell me
those
about it. Yeah, because that's not something I know much about. So, yeah, could you have some
like
examples?
Image Comics was a great one for me, like Spawn or Invincible.
Uh-huh.
And those ones I didn't start out with. Um, Spawn kind of. I just found it at a comic store and I picked it up and I read it and I was like, "Oh my. These are, in my opinion, a lot of independently published ones are better than like Marvel and DC
Uh-huh.
because they have much more freedom and I just love them." But then I later found series like Monstrous or Sandman, the
Uh-huh.
Sandman comics. In
Sure.
fact, right now I'm reading the Books of Magic in the Sandman universe.
Uh-huh.
It is great. It's very similar to Harry Potter. In fact, a lot of people say that Harry Potter was like a knockoff version of it.
Huh, huh.
It is super similar to Harry Potter, and but I really enjoy it so far. Um, but yeah, at that point, I knew fantasy was my favorite genre, and it still is to this day.
Hmm.
But I didn't necessarily start with fantasy. I've always been a big fan of like Star Wars and Maze Runner, which are considered more sci-fi.
Though
Um,
I just to interrupt you, and I'm sorry about that, but
you're
a
good.
lot of people like myself, I won't debate it too hard, but I think that Star Wars, you could say, has a lot of fantasy elements. That
Right,
it is cloaked in a science fiction kind of on the surface, but
right.
deep down, Star Wars is fantasy. It really
Yeah,
wants
like
to be fantasy, I
imagining.
think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, there are plenty of people who get upset when I say something like that. I don't know how you feel, but would you
No,
agree?
I definitely agree.
Yeah.
It's a mixture. It's
Yeah.
sci fantasy.
Yeah, yeah, we'll keep it there. We'll keep everyone happy or no one happy by calling
Yeah,
it sci fantasy. Space opera, right? Okay.
yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't until seventh grade, kind of like I said earlier, that I was lured into the fantasy genre.
Uh-huh.
Well, I kind of have a story. So it was reading
Cool.
time in class, and I had forgotten to bring a book. So I saw on the shelf The Hobbit, which I knew was the book. I had that book at home.
Hmm.
So I went ahead and picked it up, and I just started reading it just to pass the time, because I didn't want to get too into it if it was just something I was going to read just for the day. And
Yeah.
I really started to read it, and I just fell in love with the characters instantly. And like, I could not stop reading it.
That
And
shows you had excellent taste when you were in seventh grade, in my opinion.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think it took me like, because it was a little bit of a higher level book. It took me like 2 months to finish.
Hmm.
But I flew through it, and I've actually become a much faster reader since I started reading more regularly.
Uh-huh.
I
Good.
think the reason that people my age don't tend to read as much as I do is because when we're in school and we're
Hmm.
reading what we're forced to read, we maybe don't like it.
Yeah.
And I feel like school should have more freedom in what you're reading.
I agree with you actually. As speaking from the teacher perspective, now I'm not a K through 12 teacher, but I don't think it's too dissimilar. I teach at a community college where I actually started a course that's called fantasy novels. I
Nice.
also teach composition and I teach the classics, the Beowulf, and I'm actually a medievalist. That's my day job. But I obviously love fantasy, and I created this course called Fantasy Novels, and it was so much fun. And I had students in there who were more engaged than I had ever seen before. Some of the
Oh, I
best
bet.
discussions. Yeah, it was just great because they loved it. And but the whole reason I started this channel really was basically to explore fantasy literature as literature that is worthy of critical exploration, that has a lot to say about the human condition and our experiences and our lives and can help us to gain some clarity about some of the things we struggle with. And so yes, it's entertaining and it's fun, but at the same time, it's incredibly deep and important
Yeah.
so yeah, that's why I started the channel. So yeah,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on that?
I started my channel basically for the exact same way. I figured if you got the author insight and you got a perspective of a younger guy like me,
Yeah,
uh, my goal is to influence everyone to read, but more specifically,
love it.
the younger audiences to read.
Great, great,
And I feel so far I've done a pretty good job.
good.
Um, and one of the ways that I actually do convince people to read is through comics and manga.
Mm-hmm. Which
My
are
friend,
wonderful too. And just for anyone tempted to dismiss those, the same way some people look down on fantasy,
yeah,
some great storytelling is going on in manga
oh
right
yeah.
now. And I've only read six so far. So, but I can tell you
Which
that.
ones?
So Vinland Saga and Vagabond and then Monster. And then let's see what was the order exactly. And then Descending Stories, oh, I got the order wrong, but Descending Stories was another one, and then To Your Eternity was another one,
Oh
and now
yeah.
I'm on One Piece. So I haven't obviously caught up yet, but I'm getting close, and I think I've read enough One Piece to say I've read One Piece at this point.
Yeah.
So,
So currently right now I am on
ooh,
volume 9 of Vinland Saga.
you're in Vinland Saga. Nice,
Yeah.
nice.
I'm really enjoying it.
You
It
excited that it's actually finishing? The final volume is out this year?
yeah,
Yeah.
volume what's it, 14?
Yeah, I think so. I think
Yeah.
so. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm getting pretty close to the end. But I think the reason I like Vinland Saga so much is because it's called seinen manga. Do you know
Uh-huh.
what seinen manga is?
So the target audience is a little bit older than the shonen.
Yeah, and I find in shonen, it's pretty good, but it's the seriousness in seinen really helps build the story and build
Hmm.
the characters,
Yeah.
which as you see in even shonen, like One Piece has great character growth.
Hmm.
So I'm not like dissing on that, but I definitely much prefer seinen.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I can see that. I mean, I actually sometimes wonder if the label shonen isn't a little bit unhelpful in understanding something like One Piece, which
Right.
does, I think, function on lots of different levels. It's goofy and it's silly and it's fun for
Yeah.
sure. But at the same time, it manages to have real thematic depth, and
Right.
it deals with some serious trauma and some loss and suffering. And so I think it's a little bit of a misnomer in a way. But we have to categorize things. We call, in fantasy, something is YA or
Yes.
it's adult or whatever. And often I find these labels don't do us a great service in that they don't really convey the complexity of the story. But we have to have these labels to give us some sense, I guess, at least. But yeah, I haven't
Yeah.
read any other shonen. All the other ones that I named, I think, are more adult level in their target audience. So
Mhm.
shonen, in terms of shonen, I think One Piece is the only one that I have even touched. But have you read any that you would recommend to me? We're interrupting your reading journey, but what would you think
Yeah.
would be a good for a fantasy lover like myself?
Mhm.
Uh, Probably more interested in general in the more adult level stuff, but a lot of people recommend Berserk to me. Is that something you think would be a good choice?
I haven't read a lot of it because it is quite mature compared to
Right. Okay. Yeah.
some other ones. For shonen, however, if we're talking about fantasy, I would definitely recommend Black Clover.
Okay.
That one
Black
is
Clover. Okay.
really good. It's about a magic school,
Aha.
and
Okay.
they have like they get their magic at a certain age through grimoires,
Hmm.
which are like little magic books. And so I have read that one. I've read some of it. It does have a lot of filler, in my opinion. So
Okay.
at sometimes it does get boring, but I really enjoyed it.
Okay. Cool.
And then another seinen one that I have is Vagabond, but I haven't read
I've
that
that
one.
one I've read. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay,
That was my second one, and I loved it. It's brilliant storytelling and fantastic art, by the way.
but
That one is probably still my favorite in terms of the artwork that was done.
oh
Just
yeah,
brilliant, yeah, and a very complex exploration of ambition and violence and meaning and how we arrive at meaning in our lives. So yeah, it was a great thing. I highly recommend. Probably will never be finished. The mangaka didn't finish it, but did leave us with a an exhibit that is a kind of an end to it, if as it were.
yeah,
It feels like a a satisfying ending in a sense. And I don't know if you've seen that or not, but when you finish with what has been produced, I highly recommend that you look up on the internet this exhibit that he did as a final thing for Vagabond, and it's absolutely moving. It's really beautiful.
yeah. I've heard that that story is just like amazing. Like I
Mhm.
see edits of it all over TikTok. Like People
Yeah.
are saying it healed them and all this and that. It
Sure.
made it made them grow as a person.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
but a seinen manga that I actually just started reading and that I would love to do a review on soon is Gachiakuta.
Aha. Okay.
This one, so it is about, so there are two different classes. There's like the rich and the poor, and
Mm-hmm.
the poor, they kind of like to collect trash, but the rich want to remove all trash.
Okay.
And so our main character here, uh, he he lives with this guy. I forgot their relation. I've only read the first volume.
Okay.
There's, I believe, six out now.
Okay.
So he lives with this guy, and he finds when he comes home, the guy is dead, and the police arrest him. And so when you do something bad in this world, you get sent down into a pit, and it's all the trash in the world. And there's trash monsters and
Huh.
trash people.
Huh.
It's insane. And like I said, I would definitely love to do a review of this manga on my channel soon. I just have to find the time to do it.
So do you feel like this is a metaphor in a sense that is going on there, that the metaphor of the
Yeah,
trash, that there's a commentary on social hierarchy or something of that nature? Yeah.
definitely. Yeah.
Interesting. Sounds really interesting. Yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Add that to my list.
Yeah, I ordered the rest of it, but due to like the Amazon Prime Day, it's gonna take a while to get here.
Uh-huh.
So
Okay.
yeah. All right, but back to my kind of
Your
story.
journey? Yeah. I didn't want to
So
interrupt you again, though, to ask. So you read The Hobbit when you were 12, or so seventh
when
grade,
I was 13.
13, 13. Okay.
Yes.
Did you follow up with The Lord of the Rings, or
I
did that
did.
happen later?
Yeah, no, I definitely did follow up with The Lord of the Rings.
Okay, cool. So I was a similar age when I read Tolkien, and that was what baptized my imagination was reading Tolkien.
Yeah.
That's
Oh
what
yeah.
made me a reader. That's what made me a fantasy fan, set me out on this journey to Middle Earth and beyond. And I couldn't get enough. I was like, wow, this is the stuff. This is what I want to do with my life, actually, is this kind of story. Yeah. So it
Yeah.
made me want to be a writer and really inspired me to be a medievalist as well, because that's what Tolkien was, So yeah.
Yeah, actually, I was just about to move on to that.
Oh,
Uh,
perfect.
so yeah, after reading, The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, I got into Brandon Sanderson,
Nice.
Mistborn. I haven't read the Stormlight Archive yet.
Okay. Okay.
I actually just did a video. Um, And I know you said you wanted to discuss like the future of fantasy or
Yeah.
what I think the future of fantasy is.
Yeah.
I recently made a YouTube short about how Brandon Sanderson is actually taking his fantasy worlds and moving them into sci-fi worlds.
Yeah.
And at first, when I heard about this, I thought, well, this has kind of happened before and it hasn't been great. But that was before I actually read Brandon Sanderson.
Hmm.
Um, so after reading, the Mistborn arcs, I think that if he does this properly, I think this could be the next best thing, like the next,
Hmm.
like the new gen. This is what everyone will be doing if he does this properly.
Do you think that in the future people will talk about, is it possible that people talk about Brandon Sanderson the way we talk about Tolkien now as being
Yeah,
such a seminal figure in the genre? And he didn't invent fantasy, but
right,
he really sort of set this standard, and he made everybody sort of conform to a certain set of tropes, and he had a lot of Tolkien imitators all the way through the 1980s and even into the 90s, and finally
right.
people started to pull away really in the 90s and rebel and that kind of thing. So you think Sanderson is going to have that big of an impact maybe on the genre and the way we think of fantasy?
I definitely do because, well, especially if he does end up doing the turning the fantasy into sci-fi, I think
Hmm.
that will definitely leave a mark and change writing in the future.
Yeah.
Um,
I actually think he's had already a tremendous
Oh,
influence. Like
for
there are a
sure.
lot of people out there that you will find that are writing in a similar vein to what Brandon Sanderson does, in the sense that they're trying to include what Sanderson calls this hard magic system, right?
Yeah.
This very complex, very almost scientific seeming, pseudoscientific way
Mhm.
that magic works. And part of the journey, part of the adventure for the characters is to learn, and for the reader at the same time, learn how this magic works, how you can level up, and all of that. I feel like there's a lot of video game influence maybe in that kind of storytelling as well.
Mhm.
But there it is. Yeah, and I think it's a very popular thing right now, actually.
Yeah, I definitely think the pseudoscientific magic will be in future and like the whole magic, which obviously magic isn't real, but
Right?
um, building a magic system with a scientific background, I think that will, he heavily influenced people on that, and that will be in the future of both fantasy and sci-fi genre.
Yeah, yeah. I would agree with you about the it's a big influence. Even I think it's been for a while, and it probably will continue. Because when I think of a lot of people that I talk to on this show, actually, will say that it's Mistborn is one of the most common answers to the question when so you're still in high school, but
Yes.
a lot of people stop reading at some point in high school or college. They don't stop reading altogether, but they stop reading
Right.
for pleasure because they
Right.
get busy with their classes and whatnot. And then in their 20s, they'll start reading again. And I've had so many people tell me it was Mistborn that got them back into reading. And I
Yeah, I saw like Patrick Leo said that, right?
Yes, Patrick Leo is an example. He's one of my earliest episodes of this,
Right.
and he actually said, "Yeah, it's Mistborn that made him a reader and a reviewer." So yeah, for sure. And so thank you, Brandon Sanderson. That's a great service, I think. But that I feel like sets the expectation. Okay, this is what this whole fantasy thing is about. Okay, and a lot of people think when they think fantasy, they think of that style of storytelling, which includes a more complex magic system. Whereas I grew up, and you're familiar with Tolkien, that's
Yeah.
what Sanderson labels soft magic, right? That's not.
Yeah.
And there's no need to explain. It's just magic. It is, and then there's
Right.
sense of wonder and mystery attached to it. We don't have to explain. And in fact, to explain it would be in a way to kill it. So that's what I grew up with, and that's what I'm used to and love the most.
Yeah.
But I am fascinated, and I think that the other, the Sanderson style, of the hard magic system has been dominant and probably will continue to be for quite some time. You even see it with like lit RPG and
Oh,
other.
yeah.
I'm not terribly familiar with. I haven't read much, but these also seem to me to be more modeled after like video games where you level up and there's a you have to understand the intricacies of how the magic works in order to do that. So I don't know what, but I think you're right about your prediction that it's going to be the big thing. So,
Yeah, I personally would love to talk to Brandon Sanderson about what he thinks, how he
mm,
thinks he's influenced it. I've met him before. I haven't had the opportunity to
well,
interview him,
uh-huh.
but I've met him.
Tell me the
He,
story. How did you meet Brandon Sanderson?
well, he's a great guy.
Yeah, he
So
seems like a really nice fellow. He
okay,
really does.
yeah, he definitely is. So I live in Texas, but
Uh-huh.
they have a convention in Salt Lake City, Utah,
Yep.
called FanX,
Uh-huh.
and I saw that he was gonna be there, and I saw like a few other celebrities were gonna be there. So I I was like, Mom, we have to go. And I
Uh-huh.
I convinced her, and
You
so
have a very nice mother, Gavin.
I
Yeah.
do. So I convinced her, and so let's see. We were doing something, but I just remember the first day and the day that I had the tickets for him, like everything was so time packed. Like my
Mhm.
schedule was full. So I remember I waited like an hour and a half in line, and I was the first person in line because and it wasn't because like I'm early to things, but It was because I actually had a photo op with McKenna Grace right
Oh,
after. Do you know who
okay.
that is?
I don't, I'm not familiar with McKenna Grace, actually. Is that another author?
No, she is an actress.
Oh, okay. That's why I don't know, because I don't watch TV much.
Yeah. No,
Okay.
that's
What
um,
shows has she been in?
Young Sheldon is her biggest one, the
Okay.
prequel to The Big Bang Theory.
Okay, I'm familiar with the Big Bang Theory. Yes. Okay. Yeah, okay.
But anyway, I remember I was the first in line, and so he stopped and talked to me for a minute. And I
Cool.
just remember I was like, I really love your writing. You know, you inspire me to do what I do.
Yeah.
And he was like, I admire that such a young person can, I forgot exactly how he said it, but is reading my work and
Hmm.
enjoying it because obviously it's meant for a little bit older. But yeah, he was a great guide to me. I definitely would recommend it if you can. He's
Yeah.
every he's everywhere. He's doing events all the time. So
Oh, I'd love to meet him and chat with him for sure. Yeah, I've read nine of his books at this point. I can't call myself a Cosmere reader per se, but I've read nine of his books so far. And so I can say I would love to talk to the guy. And I really do admire him for what he's done for the genre in terms of getting more people to read. He also looks out for, I really admire how there was a certain point where he had a little issue with the way audiobook pricing was done.
oh yeah, I
Yeah,
heard
and
about
he really stuck up for the little people like myself, for self-published authors like me, and was willing to help out, So I admire him for that as well. But yeah, he's had a huge impact, and it's great that you could have that opportunity to chat with him. And I promise you one thing. It meant a lot to him to hear that from you, that you admire his work. I'm sure he's heard it thousands and millions of times, but it really feels great for an author to know that they've had a positive impact on a reader. I promise you that he will never get tired of hearing that.
it.
That probably, may have made his day,
Yeah.
so that's fantastic.
All right. So, where was I?
Yeah, we're on
Oh,
your, let's go back to your reading journey again. Yeah.
right. So after reading Brandon Sanderson and Tolkien, I was like, I want to be a writer. I want to write.
All
Uh,
right.
but with my prior experience, I wanted to write a comic. And
Uh-huh.
so I did so. I wrote tons of comics. I still have them all in my room. They're little paper ones.
So
And
you
I
like to
made
draw then. You must like to draw, I assume.
I wasn't very good at it, but we'll get to that soon.
Okay. Okay.
So yeah, I wrote a ton of comics, and I wrote superhero comics to start off with, but I noticed I was starting to write fantasy comics.
Okay.
And I was letting my friends read them, and they were like, "Wow, these are actually like pretty cool."
Hmm.
This was in middle school, by the way. This was in
Okay.
middle.
Yeah.
And my best friend, Aaron, he joined in. He wanted to write the comics as well.
Cool.
So we actually had a little business,
Uh-huh.
called G&A Comics.
I love
Uh,
it.
and you could actually probably find the TikToks out there somewhere. So we've
Okay.
got TikTok. That account, it's not disabled, just nobody runs it anymore because we
Uh-huh.
stopped. But the reason we stopped is because we were so bad at drawing. Uh,
Well, you can't be good at everything, right? Yeah.
right.
Yeah. We can't
So,
all be Oda, or I guess. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
I so Aaron stopped overall, but I switched to the novel and short story
Okay.
form of writing.
All right.
And I started a little story. Um, and I never ended up finishing it because it was so bad. Like the sentence structure was wrong. It was the writing was horrible. The story was all right,
Okay.
but
Uh-huh.
the writing was bad. And I've grown a lot since.
Hmm.
Um,
So my response to that, if I can interrupt you yet again,
yeah,
is there's only one way to get good at anything, and that's to do
right.
it. And your first efforts are supposed to be awful. My first stories I was writing as a teenager, I would not want anyone to see how bad they are.
Right.
But they're the reason that I write whatever it is I write today, you know? So there's a progression that has to happen. And you won't, one thing I can guarantee is you won't get any better if you don't just do it, you know? So I think you're doing the right thing. You're doing the right, and you know, treasure your early work because it is
Yeah.
what will make you into the writer that you will be someday. You know, keep at
Yeah.
it. You know, there's a wonderful Welsh proverb that says it's steady tapping that breaks the stone, right? So this is your early tapping, and eventually that stone's going to break, and you're going to tell a brilliant story someday. So yeah, I
Hope
love it.
so. Yeah. So I started off with sci-fi once again
Mhm.
because it was what I was reading, and then I just realized, sci-fi, it doesn't feel the same as fantasy.
Uh-huh.
And a story clicked in my head, and it started as similar to The Lord of the Rings, but as I worked on it, it it became its own thing.
Uh-huh.
And I haven't written it yet because I'm waiting. Like the idea needs to fully develop for
Yep.
me to do it. But I've written short stories.
Good.
Uh, I've written, I guess you could say, one novel uh, at like 140,000 words.
That's
So it's
great. Wow.
pretty
That's fantastic.
big.
Yeah.
And that one definitely, I learned so much during that one. That one I feel is what really hit the switch. It's what made me who I am as a writer today.
I love it. Yeah, an accomplishment for sure. Congrats on that, you know. That's fantastic. And you will just keep going and getting better. I'm sure. I'm sure of it. And other things, I'm sure you know all of this, but you know, keep reading, obviously, but
Yeah,
don't just read fantasy sci-fi. Read broadly, read nonfiction, read just to, you never know. You know, if you read a book about, you know, cosmology or something, how that will inform your writing at some point, you know,
yeah,
or philosophy or something, you know, it'll enrich you as a writer. And
right.
the other thing is that there are great books about the craft of writing that you can read that will make you a better
Yeah,
writer, knowing how
like
these things work, right?
yeah, like Stephen King's On Writing.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep. That's
yeah,
definitely one. John Gardner wrote a classic as well. But yeah, there's just a wealth of good books out there on the craft of writing that people would do well to study, and that will make you a better writer too. Yeah.
yeah. I definitely want to get books like that.
Hmm.
I have a broad genre span for what I like to read. My main is fantasy and then sci-fi, but I also like the classics a lot.
Excellent. Yeah.
Let's see. In school, we just finished To Kill a Mockingbird before summer started, so
Good,
that
good.
one's good. Um,
Yeah, that one's powerful. Yeah.
yeah, like I said, The Giver, that one was really good back in seventh or eighth grade. That
Hmm.
really That one inspired me to write.
That one hit deep, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Neat. Yeah. Cool.
That has basically been my story of how I got into the fantasy genre and how I got into reading in general.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I love to hear it. Those are some great stories. So now we can expand our discussion a little bit on some of those.
Yeah,
I could talk about Tolkien and Lord of the Rings and all that all day long. Uh,
definitely.
so who are some of your, let's start with that. Then we'll probably move on at some point to One Piece. I want to get to
Yeah.
One Piece too. But um, what is it you love about in your just what is it that resonates with you? Obviously, that is a story, The Hobbit initially, and then Lord of the Rings that really is important for you. What try to put into words what you feel is important about it and what it does for you as a reader, as a person.
Okay. So I think, well, in my opinion, the fantasy and sci-fi genres, the ones with the unreal worlds, they're definitely harder to write because you have your books that are real world, you know where you are, and you know the people. With fantasy, you don't know every species, you don't know what world you're in.
Yeah.
Um, and I
It's
think,
called we call it world building. You don't have that in other genres. We have to do world building in
right,
fantasy. We can't just say he was at the Eiffel Tower and everybody pictures the Eiffel Tower, right? So
right.
yeah, yeah, good. Yeah. So there's an extra component there.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think how to say this.
Yeah. And while you're thinking, I'll just say too, that Tolkien was one of the very best at this, obviously. Middle Earth is one of the most developed sub-creations or secondary worlds ever, right? I mean, the guy made up languages and
Yeah,
mythology and
I
he
think
spent
didn't
years at it.
he started with map making and the language making, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He needed a world for all those languages.
Yeah.
So,
Um, I think reading in the fantasy genre is a good way to broaden your imagination, and
mhm.
I think it makes people more creative,
Yes.
and I think people who don't, or well, not who don't read it, but people who are against it
Uh-huh.
should be reading it because it makes more creative people. It helps expand the way you think.
hmm I would agree.
Surely, as a teacher, you could probably expand on that.
Yeah, yeah, no, I think you said it really well, actually, Gavin. The truth is, I feel that fantasy fosters the imagination better than any other genre, actually.
Yeah,
It encourages the freeing of the imagination. Because if you want to have, a creature that is huge and reptilian and has wings and can fly, you can do that in fantasy. So
right.
you don't have to explain it away. You don't have to explain how that could work. The fact is that such a creature couldn't even exist. The bulk of it would never be able to fly in the air like that. But we don't care in fantasy. Our a lot of truths can be conveyed with these little lies that big T truths. So we
Right.
have these imaginary worlds to help us deal with, as I said before, life. And these are there's a term called psychic distance, right? That
Mm.
which simply means that when we're in this secondary world, we're in this made up world, we can wrestle with some of the same types of conflicts and trauma and whatnot in a place that seems different from our world, and it's therefore easier to engage with those things over there,
Yeah.
and then bring
Yeah.
that clarity back to our world to help us wrestle with those same conflicts and trauma here. So that's really important, and fantasy does that magnificently. We have myths and we have legends and things that perform similar functions, I think, right?
Yeah. And for me, I don't think sci-fi could do that as well as fantasy
Yeah.
because, well, my favorite type of sci-fi genre is the type where it doesn't have a name or anything, but where it's kind of far in the future, but we have a scientific problem and the future of, well, the government is very heavily involved and it's very political because, if I'm reading something that's in the future, I want to know where politics are and like how how the government is doing things.
Yep.
And I feel like that kind of isn't as realistic as fantasy is, even though both fantasy and sci-fi are portrayed as just very unrealistic, but fantasy has a way of correlating to the real world.
in a very metaphorical way, I think. Whereas science fiction, I think, is wonderful. I'm not knocking it. I may still get some flack in the comments here, but I will say that I think that it is restrained slightly more than fantasy in the sense that there has to be some scientific plausibility at least to the futuristic gadgets and the way they travel. Like there's an attempt to explain it in a way that feels scientific, right?
Yeah.
That like how do they get from planet X in one galaxy to planet Y in this other galaxy? There has to be, some scientific feeling explanation for that, whether they can travel at the speed of light or they freeze people, put them on ice for 90 years or whatever, and they wake up later. And you can do cool stuff with that, but it has to be anchored in some kind of scientific plausibility, I feel. Whereas
Yeah.
fantasy, you just wherever your imagination can take you, you can go. So I feel like it is the most unfettered in terms of what you can do with your imagination.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see what people think in the comments, though.
And what are some of your favorite fantasy series?
Well, as you can already probably guess, Middle Earth, Tolkien, Lord of the Rings, especially. I think that's the sweet spot for me. But I love The Hobbit and The Silmarillion. I read all the Lost Tales and everything else. So all of that was really my early inspiration. Ursula Le Guin is another writer that early on really captured my heart. And the Earthsea books, particularly the first four I read when I was young, and then. In more recent times, I've become a huge fan of the Malazan Book of the Fallen and just the
Oh,
greater Malazan universe. And that's Stephen Erickson is the writer of the Malazan Book of the Fallen, but also Ian Esselmont is the co-creator of the Malazan world, and he wrote the novels of the Malazan Empire. So there's two guys who are
oh, right.
contributing, yeah, to this overall like. There's almost like 30 books in this world.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, there's plenty of reading to do there. But that to me is just and a great example of transcendental fantasy that elevates us, that has a lot. And there's a lot of trauma, there's a lot of suffering, there's a lot of really very adult stuff that happens to the characters in that series, and it's a lot of people think it's difficult in terms of the complexity and stuff, but I think anyone who's determined could really get into it. But yeah, so then others that have really spoken to me. Robin Hobb's Realm of the Elderlings. I love that series tremendously. I think that Robin Hobb does a wonderful job of giving us characters who go through it. They get put through the ringer, but you end with a real sense of connection and a sense of the world around us in a way that's really quite beautiful and affirming. But again, it's more of a slow burn kind of series. So for people who are used to lots of action right up front and bang bang explosions, they might get like, well, when can we get to the story? Let's go here. But what she does brilliantly is it gets you attached to those characters in those first few hundred pages, and then when stuff happens, you really care about those characters a lot. So that's a brilliant series. Another one I think probably would recommend it for a little bit older readers in terms of its complexity is Jenny Wirtz's Wars of Light and Shadow. Brilliant, just one of the best authors I've ever come across in terms of the prose. It's just
Oh,
beautiful writing. So yeah, yeah, she's amazing. So those are some of my favorites. I love others for different reasons. Mark Lawrence is an author that I really enjoy. His library
okay.
trilogy, I think you might find very interesting because it is another one with a fantasy, science fiction. He doesn't care about genre, right? He just does what he wants. And you could call it whatever you want, but it's a brilliant story. And at the center of it is this infinite library, right? Which, hey, readers like that kind of thing, right?
Right.
But it has a lot to say about our world as well. So I'd recommend that one for you, the Library Trilogy by Mark Lawrence, starting with the book that Wouldn't Burn is the first book.
Okay, yeah. I've heard of that one. It's on my list. I think you did a video with him,
I
right?
did, yes, yeah, yeah. I've talked to Mark Lawrence before. Yeah, he's a favorite. In terms of more like grimdark stuff,
Mhm.
Joe Abercrombie is a great writer
Oh
and
yeah.
great sense of
I,
humor.
I picked up. The Devils. I picked that
Oh,
one
okay.
up.
That's his most recent thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I actually was supposed to go to his event in Austin, I believe it was,
Oh,
and
wow. Okay.
when they switched venues, they never got our tickets.
Oh, no.
So I never got the chance to meet him. But the one in Utah, Pierce Brown actually showed up as well.
And Brandon Sanderson,
And
right?
Brandon Sanderson, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yep. That's right. Yep. Yeah. They know each other, I think, pretty well. Yeah. So,
I
yeah.
think
Yeah. So many, I mean, just so many great writers out there. We could go on and on and on, but yeah.
definitely.
So yeah, but I don't know if what do you think you'll be reading next? What's on the horizon for you in terms of your reading and what you're covering on your channel?
I definitely, like I said, I want to do a review on Gachiakuta. I want to do it with someone though. I'm
Uh-huh.
not entirely sure because obviously you do your reviews for manga and whatever you review with people. I'm
Like
not,
this discussions are the most fun to me.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I love discussing my thoughts and hearing from other people. I'm not sure who I would do it with, but I would love to review this manga with somebody.
Okay. Well, if any viewers out there know of anybody covering that, leave us a comment.
Yeah,
But yeah, that is for me the most meaningful part of being on this platform are these discussions where I get to talk with people and they enrich my understanding and appreciation. So I'm totally with you. I like reviewing, that's fine. Just turn on
yeah,
the camera and talking to the camera, but this is much more fun for me. I really
yeah,
love talking with people and sharing that passion and sharing those insights. So yeah, well, hopefully we can get you somebody. I don't know.
especially
I haven't heard of that one, so I don't know anyone who's read it myself. But
yeah, especially since I'm not as big of a manga reader uh,
hmm
as most people. I know a few manga reviewing booktubers that I have in mind, but
uh-huh.
I'm not sure if they're willing to do collabs or not. But I
Oh,
mean,
you can
I'm willing
ask,
to try.
right?
Yeah,
The two worst things that could happen is they either ignore you or they say no, right?
right.
So
With the author interviewing, that has happened a few times. I've never actually gotten a no, but I have not gotten an answer before.
okay, yeah, where they're just kind of ignoring or whatever.
Yeah.
You've interviewed authors, I believe, yeah?
Yeah.
So what are some of the authors you've interviewed?
I've done Lynn Buchanan,
Okay.
the author of The Doll Makers, and she was actually one of Brandon Sanderson's students,
Oh,
and
cool.
she works at Dragonsteel.
Oh, nice. Okay.
I've done Andy Peliquin,
Oh,
the author
cool. Yeah.
of the Dark Blade series.
Neat.
Uh, Actually, I just realized I have not released the Andy Peliquin interview. That's coming this week, so I'm
Sweet.
not. I think I've told my Discord about that, but I don't think anyone else has. So if any of my viewers are watching this, they just got that.
Nice. That's a wow, you heard it here first, everybody. So nice. That's great. I actually would like to read his books. Have you read any of his books yet? Or you've just
Yeah,
yeah.
I've read the Dark Blade Assassin. That's
Okay.
the first book in the Dark Blade series.
Okay. Yeah, I've had my eye on his books. So yeah. And obviously that's a recommend. You wouldn't interview an author whose books you hated, right?
Right. I would recommend that,
Okay.
especially to people who love let's see, Joe Abercrombie because like the grim dark,
Okay.
uh, Scott Lynch. If you like Scott Lynch, I'd
Yep.
recommend.
Yeah,
So
I definitely enjoyed the three books that are out in the Gentleman Bastard sequence. Yeah, especially the Lies of Locke Lamora. Yeah.
yeah, I actually just picked that one up. I don't know when I'm gonna read it. I'm not
Okay.
sure if I'm gonna be able to do an interview, but we'll see.
Yeah, sweet. So yeah, you're on your way. And is that something you want to continue to do to
Oh yeah,
interview authors? Yeah.
and I actually wouldn't mind interviewing you at a later
Oh,
time.
well, sure. Yeah, anytime you want. Yeah, no, I'd be happy to talk to you in that capacity. I'll put that hat on if you would like. Yeah, that would be fun for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as I said in the beginning, it really makes me feel good to meet young people who read. And I wanted to ask you too, Gavin, a very serious question about what's your sense of how relevant will books be in the future? And your take on your generation, because you're probably used to older people like me being, oh, kids these days, and they're all on their video games and their, this and video games, by the way, there's great storytelling in video games too. I do
Uh,
recognize that.
Definitely
But
like Elden Ring. Yeah, that one.
yeah, yeah,
Lore on that is so deep.
yeah. Yep.
I,
So that's there. So I don't want to, I'm not disparaging it. I'm just trying to be stereotypical old person here. But what's your take on the future of books and writing? And I feel sometimes it feels like we're besieged by, nowadays it's the AI and the big threat
oh,
is, AI is
oh,
going to take over. And I'm a huge, not hater, but I'm somebody who wants to slam the brakes on and say, wait a minute here. What are we doing with this AI? It's taking over things that are essential to our humanity, our creativity. And if we give that away, then what are we? So
actually, Brandon Sanderson just did a TikTok on this.
good.
He said if you use AI to write or create images or anything, and then you claim it's yours, well, you're not necessarily the artist, and you're not a good artist, but you could definitely be a good art director because you
Yes.
know what
So
you
agree
want.
with him. Yeah. Another reason to like Brandon Sanderson. I had a
Yeah.
discussion with my friend AP Canavan recently on AI and its impact on critical
Oh
thinking
yeah. Yeah.
and on creativity. And my friend AP Canavan said something very similar. He said, if you're using AI to write a book and you simply tell it, you give it a prompt, and then you go over that story that the AI came up with and you tweak it here and there. You can't call yourself really rightly an author, but you could call yourself an editor, maybe,
Yeah.
right?
Y- so for what you were talking about with, you said, how do I think reading will be in the
Yeah.
future?
Are books going to be important for people your age and younger people in the future? And obviously you feel it's important because what you're doing on your channel is
Right.
basically trying to help people see, hey, this is important, right? But are
Um,
you looking toward the future with a sense of hope or with a little bit of a fear?
well, a little bit of a fear that we are going to lose the interest in reading.
Hmm.
And I think a big part of that is book talk. Are you familiar with book talk?
So I'm not on TikTok, but I know what you mean generally,
Yeah.
vaguely. Yeah, yeah.
So book talk has created a space that it gives these authors confidence,
Hmm.
even though their books are not telling stories necessarily.
Okay.
Book talk is heavily romance and romantasy,
Okay.
but these stories are not what I want to see in the future. Like, they're nothing compared to any even modern day writer. They're just, these really inappropriate things, really heavy romance that,
Uh-huh.
and it's like all these romantic fantasies put into books.
And you think
And
it's fairly formulaic? Is that part of your? Okay.
yeah, it's not telling a story in the way that we usually do. But I'm not saying that as like, oh, it's telling it in this way and it's gonna be the next new thing. I
Uh-huh.
hope it's not the next new thing because I feel book talk is it's getting people to read, but then again, it's portraying these books as good literature.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, this is an old problem actually. You might be surprised. Like people in the 19th century worried about something similar because a lot of the really popular books were perceived as fluff, as ephemeral, as basically catering to entertaining people, but without much depth or without making them better. When you put a book down,
Right.
you forget about it and it doesn't have any impact on you whatsoever. Well, okay, so you pass some time and maybe it was entertaining and or whatever. Um, but if the really deep stuff that changes people can't come to the surface because it's drowning in all of this stuff, then maybe that's problematic. I'm not ever going to say you have to read highly educational, transformational literature all the time, right? People want to read entertaining stuff. That's great. I like to occasionally read a Dresden File book or something, which,
Yeah.
you know, that's nothing wrong with that. But what I hear you worrying about maybe is this stuff is going to drown out, especially in the AI era, because guess
Yeah.
what? It's so easy to produce this kind of thing now with
I didn't
AI.
even speak on that, but I probably
Yeah.
should. So
Yeah.
a lot of new authors are getting caught using AI and they're getting
Mhm.
in trouble. Like they're getting in legal trouble for it. And I've actually had several requests on my Instagram to promote books that
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I have denied because the now I know it's this is controversial, but I have a feeling that if your book has an AI generated cover,
Hmm.
there's a pretty high chance AI helped write the book.
Yeah. Well, I've seen. So, to confirm what you're saying, and I kind of suspect the same. When I sniff AI, my antenna go up. I'm like, ugh. But there does show a willingness to use AI, and I want to be in solidarity with my artist friends. If I whine about AI being a problem for writers, why wouldn't I be in solidarity with artists? I
Right.
believe that if you really truly want to defend human creativity, you have to go across all these spaces and say, no, I'm not going to use AI art on my book cover because I want to support my artist friends. That's how I feel. So I agree with you that when you sniff a little AI there on the cover, and there was actually an anonymous survey done. I wish I can remember the details, and I don't know how scientific this was.
Mhm.
But they asked a bunch of authors privately or anonymously if they use AI, and the percent who admitted to using AI was a lot higher than I would have thought. It was really high, like more than half. And I
Yeah.
was like shocked by that. And I thought, oh, wow, okay.
So I'm curious, where do you think crosses the line of using AI? Because AI could be used in writing for maybe a helpful editor or
Hmm.
helping develop a maybe like a character or something, which I personally wouldn't even recommend. But
Yeah.
what do you think crosses the line as cheating in writing?
So I'm going to answer this in a very personal way, and I hope it doesn't sound like I'm being judgmental toward people who do think that using AI is okay. I don't
Right.
mean to be telling anyone else how to do it, but for me personally, zero, nothing. I don't want to use AI for anything. I wouldn't use it to edit because I have an editor who is a human being who
Right.
I enjoy that relationship very much. I've learned a lot from that relationship, whereas I feel like if I just had an AI editor, it would tell me what to do. It would be a fairly bloodless, very sterile experience in comparison to that really rich relationship I have with my human editor, where there's a whole learning process that takes place with this exchange between him and me. I would never want to replace that with an AI tool. No, thank you. I would not use it to get ideas or develop characters or anything whatsoever. But I am maybe I'm extreme in that sense, but I don't want to use any AI at all, period.
I think that's very reasonable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's me. But apparently, others disagree because a lot are using it without admitting it.
Hmm.
And there are some who are open about it. And I can respect a little more the ones who are open about it, honestly, because at least they're saying, yeah, I'm using it and I think it's fine. And, I use it for this and that and the other. But I don't want it at all in my writing. I'm a purist, I guess, when it comes to
Yeah.
AI. Not in a lot of things, but when it comes to AI, I don't want to have anything to do with it. But I don't want it to be a crutch. For me, the mistake a lot of people are making in their thinking about AI, oh, it's going to make everything so easy. It's so nice. It can free up my time, blah, blah, blah. Um, some of that may be true, but don't forget that the value is not just in the product at the end of it all, but in the process. I have
Mhm.
found, and I know you have too, because you've written a long book.
Yeah.
The creative process itself of writing a book has been so valuable to me. And I've grown from that. You told me about how you grew from
Yeah.
writing that book. That would not happen for you if you used
Exactly.
AI. It
Yeah.
wouldn't have, even if you used AI to do some of what you accomplished, it would take away from what you learned. And I mean that from the ground up, from the writing even to the editing, because I learned a lot in the process of editing. Yes, it took a lot longer than using an AI, but I learned so much about writing in that process. I wouldn't trade that for anything.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons I started so young in writing is because I wanted to learn early on. And that's also one of the reasons I don't use AI and never will, even if it becomes partially acceptable, which I personally don't think it should be. If
Yeah.
you're publishing something, I don't think AI should be used. Maybe like on,
Or put a label on it. I'm okay
yeah,
with it. If you put a
yeah,
label on your book that says this was edited with AI or this was written by AI or whatever it was.
yeah, I have checked it out.
I won't
Gone.
read it myself, but hey, that's me.
No, I've gone into ChatGPT and say like, "Hey, write me a 10,000 word short story." And I
Uh-huh.
just kinda wanted to see like, if it actually had
Right.
good stories, and it really didn't. Like,
Thing is, it can write better and better these days, but it has a few formulas that it keeps spitting out again and again and again. It doesn't have an imagination.
yeah,
It
it can't
simply
create
repeats
something new.
formulas.
And
So
that's what we want in as writers. We want something new.
right,
And AI could never create something new. It could only go based off of something.
correct. Yeah, it does not have an imagination, and that's a key difference. And we certainly don't want to sacrifice our imaginations, do we?
Right.
That's how I feel. So yeah, I've planted my flag on this one, and I'm gonna stick with it. I will die on this hill. Um, and yeah, I just feel like I feel bad for people growing up in this era where there may be a lot of confusion. And it seems like you have a lot of clarity on this, which I love. But I feel
Yeah.
like a lot of people don't see a problem with consuming content that was created by AI. And I
Mm.
feel like if they could only understand the importance of the process and the importance of supporting artists and people who put the time into this in order to create something, a story, as flawed as it might be. I'd rather read a story with a bunch of grammatical errors than to read anything polished by AI.
Exactly. Even here on YouTube, we just had a scare because a ton of people thought YouTube was gonna delete all accounts who are AI.
Hmm.
And so AI is just going into everything.
There's a lot of AI content on YouTube now. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I don't think it's fair. I mean, obviously you're a much bigger YouTuber than I am and you get paid
Well, for
from it.
now, I have a feeling that might not always be the case, but yeah.
Thank you. But I don't get paid from it yet. But there are people who type something into AI and they have a video in 15 minutes and they do get paid from that.
Yeah.
While you and I are over here putting effort
Right.
into these videos with editing, structure, all this and that, and they get theirs in 15 minutes and get tons of views and get paid for it.
Yeah. Well, but they're no wiser after it all.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, there are big challenges ahead, I think, for humanity, but for people who love the creative arts and those of us who find value and importance in all of that. It's there are challenging times ahead, but I think the more people like you and I can say, look, this is important. And
Yeah.
I firmly believe that it's important enough to take a stand on it. And I think I'm hearing more voices. I'm hearing more educators who are now like, no, we're not going to just blindly use these cool toys, these new AI technology things in our classrooms just because we're told we have to do it. Because we don't think it's helping our students. I
Right.
hear more and more people who are saying, I don't want to read AI stories. I don't want to consume AI art. I want to support the people who are creating these things. So yeah, hopefully, there'll be enough people on board with that will make a difference. But we got to keep fighting the good fight in the meantime.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, Gavin, this has been really heartening for me. I've enjoyed chatting with you very much, and I look forward to future conversations we may have about fantasy and manga and what have you.
Yeah.
And I want to wish you the very best for your channel. Once again, it will be linked in the description, of course. But yeah, I wish you so much luck and fulfillment with your channel and especially with your writing. I
Thank
really hope you derive great fulfillment from that. I see great things ahead for you. So stay
you.
on
Yeah.
track, my friend.
All right. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
It's been a pleasure, but that is it from us for now. Until next time.